Wake up, buyer payer people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhodes on the Buy Here Pay Here morning show. Take it away, you two.
Hey, good morning, friends.
Good morning, everybody.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. We're at the Guyman Library, sitting
We're in
across the
Guyman,
table.
Oklahoma. She says like folks are going to know where that town is.
Well, Jim was born and raised here.
It's a tiny little town in western Oklahoma. We're out here spending some time with my mother, who's recovering from a pretty serious medical situation. She was hospitalized for a time, and we've had lots of prayers and well wishes, and there's some folks out there waiting for some material from me, and so this is an opportunity to help them understand we're catching up now, but it's been a kind of a bumpy stretch since coming back off NIADA, short stay at home, and then to Oklahoma, and now we're fortunate to be able to use facilities at the local library, which is fantastic, and they've been gracious to accommodate us here, and glad to have a space to set up. So.
So it's just been busy on our front with just lots of for me, lots of cooking meals and making sure medications are taken and doctor's appointments and things like that. So
Michelle's been wonderful to help out with all those kind of things. But that's kind of what's been happening in our world. Today we want to talk about the situation with the kind of the market, what we're seeing, kind of what we're hearing and feedback. And we wanted to just kind of go past the news, because depending on what news station you're watching, is going to depend on what story you get.
That was something we were talking about this morning, is it seems like people that, and this goes regardless of which side of the aisle that the administration is on, the party typically of the administration, everyone feels good. And they, the consumer confidence is up. The side that's on the other side, it's like, oh, no, it's going to be bad. And it's down. And so, based on some of the things that the stats that were pulled for today's podcast, is there's this split right now of whether or not someone feels like things are going well or not. But overall, it seems that there, from what stats we were looking at, that there is a trend that we just wanted to be able to talk about today.
Yeah. And, we didn't go to Fox News or MSNBC. We went to ChatGPT and had it, of course, pull together as much information. And it did bring back kind of a mixed bag, and it gave very specific statistics that we can lean on. And this came about, Michelle, because yesterday we had one of our V8 Plus sessions, which was a follow-up on a business plan thing that we've been doing for months now. And so in that conversation, we had some dealers present, in addition to the dealer who was kind of our host, if you will. And that conversation went to that around charge-offs. We were talking about, in this particular dealer's case, we had forecasted back at the first of the year, as part of this work with business plan, the charge-offs through the first 6 months of the year. And when we convened yesterday, that dealer's charge-offs were higher. And that was all measured relative to 2024. So what we're saying is this dealer's traveling at a higher charge-off rate than they had been in 2025. Now, this is just one dealer, but it sparked the conversation around what's going on in the marketplace. Like, again, depends on what news station you watch as to what you can really get a feel for. And so we just tried to dig in a little bit this morning and figure out, what can we know about what's happening in the marketplace, especially as it relates to our subprime consumer, who's obviously, tends to be lower income. And if anybody's being hit by changes in employment, which every indication is employment's fine, right?
One of the things said that employment is up. More people are employed, but confidence is a little bit down. And so, the overall was around, people are just more cautious.
So we're just trying to get an idea of, why talk about this subject, right? So it's like the thing brought back this mixed bag of indicators. And so it's really just trying to figure out what is happening with consumers that is causing, and some of our dealers are seeing slower sales. We'll see the numbers coming in this week on our V8 data from the month of June, but we're certainly seeing dealers, as you talk about slow sales, And I think what we're getting an indication of, and look, there are always summer doldrums. It seems like in the buy here, pay here space, there's a bit of a downturn, people coming off of, kind of a busy tax refund season. So it feels especially quiet, in May and June probably. But we are seeing some indications that dealers are struggling to produce business and certainly to save charge-offs.
Yeah. And, one of the quotes that I was looking at when we were going over the notes for today is, talking about government stats, because a lot of this is based on the Consumer Confidence Index. And so those of you who are familiar with what it is that the government does, or different entities that, government, is they will just survey random people about where they feel a lot of different questions. They're asked the same questions about their confidence in the economy. And, I loved how it put this. It says, this stat isn't just for Wall Street.
Yeah.
This is a window into your customer state of mind.
Yeah, good point.
And so, it's an important thing. None of us just look up what kind of government statistics and, all of that are happening right now. We're busy running our business and seeing all of the things. But it is important with these kind of things to see overall, because we talk about all the time, dealers that we've worked with across the country will say, well, our customer is different. It's like, no, your customer is not different. It's just, you have a different geography. Yeah. And when you're seeing things like this, which is a national survey, this is like in general, people that are spending. And this survey also, it encompasses all tax brackets.
Right.
And so I think that the thing that's probably the most alarming to what's happening is probably around the franchise world, because it's, the stats are showing they're just not buying the same way because of this confidence that people are hesitant.
Yeah, and I can make the case that, and this is not based on stats, this is just based on many years of being around the industry. When you're talking about a consumer in our segment who is at the lower income level, of just consumers, across auto buying, they're going to be across typically in the lower income segment. So if there is I'll call it financial anxiety, like if there is some sort of financial anxiety out there or apprehension, then it's going to be felt, often by that consumer that we're talking about here. And while it says that they're consumers, even consumers who are employed or even earning more, they're actually spending less. So what that tells you is there's some kind of pent up apprehension about spending, which suggests a degree of uncertainty, which is what financial experts talk about. And look, Michelle and I aren't here as financial experts as much as we are people who see from our experience with the dealers, what their window is into their own interactions with consumers. Yeah. So that's mostly what we're coming from. Go ahead.
Mark Anderson piped in comments, says our charge-offs are through the roof. Customers are out of money. Overall cost of living is consuming so much of the consumer's cash flow. We've been talking about that for a year or more. The environment has changed on this. We're rolling into rent to own on a trial basis at one location, giving our customers the ability to walk away and help out cash flow. Okay. Which is, it's an interesting way of approaching this too. Thanks, Mark, for the comment.
Yeah, for sure. I think, we've got some real takeaways for today, which we'll get to. I think, you already heard me say that folks are spending less. I mean, that's what these studies suggest. And we can refer you to the actual studies. There, among the ones that were referenced, there was the University of Michigan study. There's one by something called the Conference Board that reported a drop in confidence, especially about the future. So I think these studies were a mix of all consumers. Most of them are all consumers, but obviously you can apply what you can know about all consumers and spending and buying habits. You can apply to this segment that we're in.
Yeah. And this is an indicator. I think everybody, when we have conversations with people, there is so much uncertainty around everything right now. And so when you don't feel, when you don't feel confident, it's a natural thing to kind of pull back or change how you spend. And we know in buy here, pay here, people typically are not buying a play car.
Right.
They're buying a vehicle to get them to and from work. They have to have this vehicle.
Sure.
It's not the one that they're going to drive on the weekends. It's
Mhm.
not the one for them to go camping in. It's not the one, all of that. This is their primary getting them to and from work vehicle. But that, we say I think we think frequently that our consumer is different than everybody else, even just in how they're perceiving things. I just don't know. They watch the same things. Right. They're plugged into the same kind of stuff. And so I can understand just from watching. I watch the spectrum, Jim, we were talking about, it's not Fox News, it's not CNN. I watch all of it and then, kind of pay attention to what people are thinking. And there is just a pulling back and the spending less, which even though they're earning more, because it's showing that unemployment or employment is up, unemployment is down, yet they're still very cautious about how they're spending. And so, translation for buy here, pay here, you're going to probably have fewer impulsive buyers and more price sensitivity for those that that's something that matters. And as we're watching things happen in our economy, we've been talking about for a while that everyone in the industry that's been here for a long time has known that there's going to be an influx, that there are people that are shifting from one tax bracket into another. And we've seen this happen in the past. So there are more people that are our customers or our potential customers that are still approaching this through the lens that they had having better credit.
Right.
And so they're just going to be more cautious.
Yeah, you can definitely have that. I think I want us to shift into this part about, is it time to adjust? If behavior is changing and the GPT thread offered us some suggestions, which I think are on point, but I think just as coaches who work with dealers, who work with consumers, I think there are a couple of points that we can see that are going to be relevant things to contemplate as a business owner if this sentiment, we'll call it, and this sort of financial anxiety is going to persist. Then what might we do as dealers?
The consumer confidence, all of the different surveys, there are a couple of things that they collected data, and that was a conclusion of, is that more people or customers are cutting back in general. More people are buying generic or, not the expensive brands because they're just trying to cut back. Traveling less. Now we do know that our consumer, they're not typically travelers. But it may be like the trip to Vegas. Things like that. Because our customers do those kind of trips. It's like and they're buying more secondhand goods, which to me says that there's probably an awful lot more that's moving on things like Facebook Marketplace and the secondhand stores and things like that. They're probably, if people are buying more secondhand, that those are happening more. But we talked this morning about this travel thing.
Yeah, and again, our consumer and buy here, pay here, it's not like they're doing exotic travel or going away to the Bahamas for a week vacation. It's not that kind of travel. That consumer that we serve, they might have, weekend getaway to go camping at the local lake or whatever. There's that kind of, travel and recreation for them. But I think what we're really talking about here is, if you look at a broader indication, and look, this is just one example, but I posed the thing in our conversation yesterday with our V8 members, like coming from Vegas in the late June. We were just there. And my own observation, like that was the slowest I think I've ever seen Vegas. You walk through the casinos, they're very sparse. Traffic out on the street is pretty sparse.
All the Ubers that we talked to, they said, it is dead.
It's dead.
It's
and
dead.
So, it's like, how much of that is typical? It didn't feel typical to me because conference is always in June in Vegas. And so it's felt very atypical. So it's just one indication. Some of the others in the room who were also in Vegas, echoed that idea.
And I from my perspective, on a global scale, that people aren't traveling as much everywhere, because
Okay.
Vegas is usually just packed with people that are coming in from out of the country.
True.
And I didn't see less citizens of the United States and more foreigners. It was still that same balance, but it was just less
people,
just
yeah.
overall.
So again, just one
yeah.
indication, but if that is true, if people across the country are spending less, it is an indication of consumer confidence, right? It's an indication of spending confidence. And so people are going to kind of hold their money. And so I think this is, when we think about should we adjust, I think for me, the answer is yes. I think and one of our dealers and a member yesterday said, if we don't get efficient, and he would more specifically what he said, if we're the last dealer to cut costs, like adjust expenses, then that doesn't bode well, right, for dealers. So that means those are going to be the ones to potentially fail. So there's cost cutting. Like I would be especially looking at operational expenses. Why? Because if you go back to the Ken Shilson thing that we've talked about a number of times in recent podcasts, is like he used to say, go back and double your charge offs and determine what that impact is on your business. Will you still be able to stay afloat? Maybe you got a lender and a borrowing base. What is that going to do to your borrowing base? We've seen that have a really profound impact with a lot of our dealers who are with lenders, right? So I think there's an efficiency question. Let's get ourselves healthy. Let's cut our costs. Let's make sure that we're lean, that we're going to be efficient in terms of our operating expenses. And then I think my mind goes to affordability. Like I think it's probably going to be wise for us to adjust our buying. Are we able to still get a consumer to pull the trigger if our payments are running $650 a month, as an example? Are we going to get enough applicants who are comfortable stepping into a $650? And even if they're comfortable, will they be able to manage it, right? So this is the question that is something I think dealers are going to want to look at, is should we be adjusting our cost? I'm saying have a second tier. I'm not saying abandon your business model. That's not what I'm saying. I'm simply saying have a tier of financing that is going to allow you to get to a more affordable payment, still keep the terms sensible in terms of length of contract. And so that's going to be in cost of car. And it might be a time for us to adjust. I always used to say, Michelle, as a dealer, when the market shifts and cost of car went up for me as a dealer, what that meant to me was that I maintained discipline to the number. Because I used to always say when I was going to the auction, I was going to buy a number, not a certain car. Okay. So the difference would be for me that mine was driven off of financial model, right? So I was chasing a particular number. So what that meant to my consumer who was shopping is that if the market shifted and cost of cars went up, that simply meant that what they were going to see on my lot was a car might be a couple model years older, might be a little more miles, because I was sticking to a certain financial model, right? And so that's what I think can happen here. And beyond that, dealers might want to add another tier of financing that they maybe aren't carrying now to be able to make sure they can get to a payment that a customer can feel comfortable. Because one of the suggestions that it brought us ChatGPT suggested, and I think it's right on point, is when we're working with our team, this can be our BDRs who are working in the CRM and kind of lead management. This can be on the sales floor working with customers. It's the phrasing it says is train your team to listen for hesitation, not just objections. So in sales, we're used to thinking about actual verbal objections. But what we need to recognize here, which is tricky in the BDR relationship on the CRM side, is can we identify hesitation? And this is part of where I think we have to be able to communicate with customers. And I think the chat thread is problematic. I don't know how much you're going to be able to learn in terms of customers' hesitation. If you quote them a payment, and suddenly the thread goes quiet, then they get ghosted. We just gotta be aware that this consumer is probably going to be a little more payment sensitive, and I don't know what it means yet in terms of down payment. We saw our dealer who we had in our as an example, he's an East Coast dealer, and his down payments were fine. He was still seeing down payment. Volume was down, which is obviously there's a question about the relationship of down payments to volume. But what we were seeing with that dealer is that they were still seeing a decent average down payment. But will the customers pull the trigger, at a certain payment? And this is the part that I think I would be advising dealers to adjust and make sure that they've got a program available that can allow a customer to get to a payment.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. We talk about measuring and measuring and measuring and
Mhm.
measuring. And, I'm not deep into the numbers. So this is something that I'm just asking the question. We can look at it because I don't know that you're going to have an answer for it. But if we look statistically, those that are charging off, what was their PTI
Mhm.
when that loan was written?
Yeah.
And was it, because for me, an outsider looking at that, if their PTI was too close to that line that we try to keep it at,
Mhm.
or was it over what is the average that
For
you're
PTI,
for
I think
PTI?
we hear
Okay.
dealers, they're aiming for 20%
Okay.
net.
Yeah.
I heard a dealer say yesterday 23% gross.
Yeah.
So that's roughly what
So, if you're selling cars that are 21 or 25 or whatever, to their PTI, are those the ones that are charging off more? And so it's like, it's one of those things that you can guess,
Mhm.
the charge-offs are going up, but doing a post-mortem in general of all your charge-offs every month and saying, where were they on PTI? Where were they, and looking possibly even at your underwriting after the fact. And it's like, we know that things are changing in the economy and all that. We know, and we've been talking about this for over a year,
Mhm.
that grocery prices are
Sure.
way more. And it doesn't, for people that are middle income or upper middle income, it doesn't hit us as hard.
Mhm.
But for when, $1 is what you have to spend,
Yeah.
and now what you could buy for $1 is now $1.25. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm not buying it, or I've got to just shift.
Yeah.
And we don't, dealers that are really truly care about their consumers' success, we don't want to take food off their plate.
Right.
We don't want to take a roof off of over their head.
You can't. They won't do that.
Yeah. I mean, and so it's like, we do that PTI. I'm just wondering if maybe what the answer to that is that we figure out how to do it at a lower PTI and at a shorter term.
Well, I sat in a session, and Rhonda Cavender won't mind me mentioning that. Rhonda is a well-known and respected dealer out of Georgia, been in business a long time. And he talked about how he shifted his own model. So the first half of my career, I was doing this. Second half of my career, I shifted. We started being a little more selective in our underwriting. And he shifted to a much lower PTI, and he's still doing business. So he succeeded in attracting a consumer who had a little more income. Now, my question would be, in some markets, can we afford to do that? Can we get enough volume at that? I like the idea. The question is, can we do both? I mean, can we still reach for that customer and create a reason for that customer to be attracted who has a little more income? And can we still satisfy the customer who is otherwise a good candidate for the program, but their income is such that we might need to be at a 20%? I'm simply saying I'd like to serve both until I verified that I had enough volume to satisfy my business plan, right? I have to create a certain amount of volume to sustain my business and my cash flow. So that just means we got to find that balance. And I think one of the things, Michelle, we don't know, we're certainly counting on the CR or the underwriting software out there to help us in terms of analyzing that PTI and what the results have been. But I think you could deliver a deal a year ago that was just fine on PTI. But if the customer's confidence is now shaken and they're a little more nervous about spending, one of the things I just asked, I'll try to answer it before we finish up. While you were talking a minute ago, I was able to go to ChatGPT and ask the question about insurance rates too, auto insurance, because this is another area of hesitation for customers who are stepping in.
It's like part of their payment. And so now that with their auto insurance, they're at 25 or whatever percent.
And I know some listening are going to say CPI solves that, right?
But they're still paying extra for it on top of what.
So I don't know what that means about rates for CPI or full coverage, but it's another consideration when the customer is hesitant about stepping in. And so I think what those dealers who are likely to do business are going to be, in my mind, those who can create a structure that has an affordable payment that doesn't cause the dealer to have to stretch term unnecessarily. Any dealer can adjust to a lower payment and stretch term, but that may not be a sensible or sustainable approach. So, because we have to obviously stay ahead of the depreciation of the vehicle and keep a sensible kind of amortization. So this is the part that I think, dealers are going to have to be watchful. And I think what we're really trying to zero in on today is that let's recognize that the psyche of our customer right now across the country is probably, among the phrasing used in here was that the psyche is a little fragile, right? It's like a little bit, there's some uncertainty. And this can happen when there's a changing of a guard, but there's a lot of other elements that are sort of driving some uncertainty here. And this just means that we've got to be mindful of that. If we're going to continue to produce business and to save charge-offs, we've got to be aware and look, this matters. We're not watching Wall Street, right? We're not reading the Wall Street Journal every morning. And dealers aren't necessarily watching the Wall Street Journal, but I can promise you that those lenders who are supplying lines of credit to buy here, pay here, they're watching Wall Street and kind of the indicators and kind of the markers in the industry.
Consumer confidence index too is a big one that Wall Street does watch.
Sure. Yeah. And I think if I were a lender into the space, I would want to see my dealers adapting to the shifting market and make sure that they're able to accommodate, because I do, if I'm a lender, I obviously want to see my dealer do plenty of business. I want to see them create volume and have a healthy structure and have a chance to be successful. But I think if we just try to stay where we're at and just do what we've always done, then we run the risk of seeing our volume drop off and seeing our charge-offs increase. And I think this is where we want to make sure dealers are adaptive and are able to make those kind of shifts.
We are always, we're always through White Hat Way. It's like being transparent. It's just like, let's be really, really open about all of the different things and, earning people's trust, because if they're hesitant, if it's with someone that they trust, someone that they've, trust has been earned, they'll be less hesitant.
Right.
You just need to make sure that you're putting them in a vehicle that they really, truly can weather the storms of an economy that's just, it's for a lot of people that confidence in it, it's pretty shaken. Yeah. And so one of the things it says, don't oversell.
Right.
Earn trust by being transparent. So don't oversell it. And it's just, and when you talked about, salespeople are trained to look for objections. This is a different animal too. This is a hesitation. This is, it's that's objections. You can get through them. People do that. That's a tactic. It's part of the sales process. A hesitation is different. And it's like, I need the car. I want the car. I want a sign, but I just don't know if this is going to work.
Yeah. And I think, I'm glad this came up because we don't talk about it enough, but it's always been my belief in sales that the salespeople that are most effective, especially for the long term, do a lot more listening than speaking. Yeah. And I think this is especially a time for us, whether we're in a BDR situation on the front end of the sale or in the building. This is a time, and obviously you can apply it in collections too. This is a time for us to do a lot more asking questions and listening. Let the customer explain what they're thinking and what they're feeling. And because I think we need to be aware of sort of the sentiment. Yeah. Right. It goes beyond just what's in the bank account. And so I think we need to be able to figure out and be mindful of that. I think if we can be better listeners and be aware of kind of what we're dealing with in terms of the individual psyche and the collective psyche of our industry and those consumers that we serve, it's going to make a big difference.
Well, and when you ask questions because and genuinely are asking questions because you're interested in what is happening in their world, people feel understood.
Right.
And I'm talking about, you don't ask a question and then start blathering off all of the things that you have to solve their problem. As you ask questions and then you ask another question, And part of that process when you're in your discovery is, you ask the questions, they give you the answer, and then you kind of parrot back what you heard, which makes them feel even more understood.
Sure.
And if you can get through, like, what are your needs? What's your situation like? And all of these things, and not just asking the textbook, but I love Candace, because Candace Owens from Nebraska. She's fantastic.
You mean
dealer.
Candace Price?
Candace Price. I'm sorry. Thank you. That wrong Candace.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
right. But she, they'll ask questions, and they'll find through asking those questions that there might be other things that they can help with other than a car.
Right.
And that when people feel like they are heard and understood, their trust levels go up drastically.
Yeah.
And so, even if, and we've talked about this before as well, if you can teach your salespeople and your collectors both, what opportunities are there out there? What programs are out there? What is their problems, the things that are maybe making them more hesitant than normal? And if there is something in your community that can help with that, and you solve a small problem while they're sitting there with you, it's like that trust barometer, that trust bank.
Yeah.
It will fill up an awful lot more, because a customer will feel heard, understood, and that you genuinely care about their success.
Yeah. Good. I think it builds up trust, and I think it builds up loyalty. And I would just say, don't believe what you're hearing, folks. Customer loyalty is not dead. Don't buy into that. It's not dead. You just have to earn it. You have to earn it. And I think one of the ways you earn it, kind of as you talk through that, I'm thinking one of the ways we earn it is to listen to the customer. And even though, because I got pretty skilled as somebody who worked in new car sales and some of that before and even I was in retail business before that, I would get pretty good at sort of a phrase of kind of adopt at least the mindset, and sometimes actually use the phrase about, if I could, would you? In other words, and what I'm really bringing to that is like, when I meet with a customer, is like, talk to me about what would be the best case scenario for you. Like, I just need to hear, and then I get quiet and let them share with me, what is it? Because customers will tell you under what circumstances they will buy if you'll just shut up and listen.
That is such a hard skill to learn, but it can be learned. Some people naturally have it. Jim happens to be someone that has more of a natural skill, to listen. But the listening, and I struggle with that. Yeah. Where there's a moment of hesitation, and you want to fill it.
Sure.
And or you take that hesitation as, when you've asked a question they haven't answered, that it's like, you get very uncomfortable. And so part of that is just stopping and and listening. And Jim, one of his favorite things is if there was a difficult conversation, he would ask the question, and then his pen would be dropped and his hand would be taken away from it, and he'd just wait. Yeah. And that is a skill, but it is, even if it's a hard question, people want to be understood.
Yeah. And I think the part that I'm saying is, even I could go to work in any BDC tomorrow, and without having any authority to negotiate payments or anything, I could ask a customer, what are you looking to do? Like, what would be the best case scenario for you? If you could buy a car, what would you be looking to do in terms of down payment, et cetera? And if they come back to me and say, I could really be comfortable at $300 a month because I need, to save room for insurance, I can say to them, it's not going to be my decision, but I can tell you that's a pretty low payment. I don't know that we'll be able to get there. And so I'm able to, without the authority, I can work with people, and obviously I'm going to need to be able to bump them up to find a balance that is workable for both the dealership and the customer. But I can listen first to them and let them see that I'm interested in trying to get to what works for you. Yeah. Right. Because otherwise, you hear me talk about, a lot of us are guilty of running a customer through a cattle chute sort of process. Yeah. This is the way it works. This is what you have to do. And if you fit this, and this, you can buy a car today.
Look at how
efficient we were. Yeah.
And I know we've focused an awful lot on the sales side, but most of this translates to collections as well. And when, we're talking charge-offs, that is a result of collections. Yeah. And it's the same things. It's the listening. It's the being empathetic. It's the it's not the where's your payment? It's like, hey, what in the best case scenario, what would work for you? And then finding a common ground. Yeah. And I can hear already in my head that, well, the consumer's going to say, I just don't want to have to make a payment this month. It's like, okay, well, I appreciate that. That isn't a solution. So what can we do? Where can we? And helping them find solutions to whatever the challenges, because people don't just fall off of their contract because they were meandering around and boom.
Sure.
There's usually things that are happening in their life that everyone experiences it. And there's an awful, I don't know about you guys, but I know in my world right now, there is
You almost did it.
there is a lot of life happening.
I got to get the
now,
bleeper button.
I know,
little
right?
burst
And,
on the screen.
there's a lot of life happening to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And there are struggles. I mean, just in our family and all of the things, and whether it be a health crisis, for a lot of them, it's a health crisis, or it's a job crisis, or it's a something that this is just not, it's happening everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's just really, really a time for us to be empathetic, to be smart about our business decisions, but listen to people, because there are a lot of people from all tax brackets right now that are challenged.
Yeah.
And it is a time for us to not separate ourselves from our consumers, but to jump in, and it's like, what can we do? How can we help?
Let's give our listeners some takeaways for today. Okay. I think the big takeaways from me would be as follows. In order for us to have a chance to win, for these, this is what I would call the expected winners of tomorrow. Okay. The expected winners of tomorrow are going to be the ones who engage their customers. They are in communication with their customers regularly, not just when a payment's past due. So that's what, when we talk about engagement, we're talking about preemptive, proactive, engagement that has a lot of goodwill wrapped in it. Okay. So now we're in communication. We're in communication. So in the course of doing that, we build a level of trust. We create those trust deposits that we talk about. And in order to do that, we have to be good listeners. We're going to communicate, we're going to engage, and we're going to listen. Okay. The other thing we're going to do is create simplicity in the process, right? That's going to be true on the sales side. It's going to be true on the collection side. We're going to make life simple for the customer and make it easy for them to be successful. Okay. The other is going to be affordability, right? It kind of wraps into what we're talking about. It's got to be simple. So I think the dealers who are going to win are going to be the ones who can make terms affordable without compromising their own deal structure and success. Okay. So when I say affordability, I'm not saying give the cars away. I'm not saying give them lower payments on the same car. I'm saying those who create an affordable solution will be, I believe, the winners of tomorrow. And then creating predictability and certainty, which kind of goes back to trust. When we can, as a business, we can help the customer feel sure that if they step into an understanding with us today, suppose we're meeting a customer for the first time and they step into an understanding with us today, that they can sense that we're going to be there with them tomorrow. And so this is a lot of what I talk about engagement. It's one thing for us to say it the day the customer's buying the car. They're uncertain. They're moving ahead with a little bit of, and you don't want to have customers back on Monday morning with buyer's remorse because they stepped into something. So this goes back to what you were saying about overselling. We don't want to oversell and have the customer step into an agreement and now they're uncomfortable and they're an increased chance of failing. So what we have to do is show them that we're going to be there to support them through whatever it is. And so if they step in and commit to that payment, that we're going to work with them and through whatever life's challenges may be tomorrow, that we're going to be there. So show them some predictability and certainty about tomorrow. And I think you'll win that customer. And like I said, this is just, I would just say that we're going to have more, we've got a chance to do as much business or more. The opportunity is still going to be there.
Oh, yeah.
The question is going to be,
get to work.
So I think we just have to be ready to, create solutions and be able to communicate in a better way. Probably, right.
And, that communication is, let me ask dealers out there, is it worth spending possibly or attributing more time with your team for reaching out and communicating just in a, hey, how are things going? We just wanted to just check in with you, not a collections call. And we've been talking about this quite a bit lately, but a lot of dealers, it's like, no news is good news. That is not good news because you are missing where people are about ready to trip. And if people feel like you genuinely care and those quarterly calls to all of your customers. It's just like, just checking in, making sure everything is okay. How's the car, all of those kind of things. People feel like they're understood and heard,
Okay.
and that they matter, and that when they feel like they matter, they're going to be more likely to pick up the phone when it is a difficult conversation call, or they're going to be more likely to calling you if they are hitting a roadblock. As long as when you're making those reaching out, and it's like, hey, let us know. We don't want to have to chase after, because then it ties our hands more.
Right.
But let us know what's happening, and so that we can find solutions that everyone can work with.
Good. Yeah.
And so please continue just talking to your consumers. And Tommy, good morning. And I know Tommy, his thing is it's care. I can't. Cars and relationships.
Create a relationship.
Create a relationship. Thank you.
Yeah.
Create a relationship. Car.
Yeah.
And it's about creating those relationships with people. And it's if we're waiting for the collection calls or just the sales process to create a relationship, you've lost. You have to create those relationships, especially in a market that is uncertain.
Yeah. Earn some loyalty. I'm telling you, it can still be done. Is the consumer different today? Yeah, they're different. Can we still earn loyalty? I think you can.
Yeah, all right. So we'll be back on Wednesday with another Wednesday. Thank you.
Yeah.
My brain is like, I think that my brain is shut down enough that when I have two things to do at once, first not possible. Not women. I don't know. I was gender. Women have the ability to just be thinking about 10,000 things at once. This one right now, one thing at a time. Hey, everybody! Again, thanks so much for joining. We know you are busy, and we really appreciate you listening and also checking in on us.
Yeah. Have a great weekend.
Yeah. All right. So we will talk to you guys on Wednesday. Have a great day. Thanks.